Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires, because we cannot escape the world of darkness on this channel, and why would we want to? Why would we ever want to leave the world of darkness? Pentex provides us with everything we need. It would be rude of us to throw it back in their faces. We should show more gratitude to Pentex. We should actually tell Pentex how much we need them, how much we love them, and frankly, the ingratitude might just make them cut us off. No more Otolis, no more Endron, no more Magadon for us. Wouldn't that be terrible? So remember to say thank you to your Pentex representative the next time one swings by. This video is on the subject of Mithras, and specifically the Mithraic mysteries. Why am I making it? Well, as I have made clear many, many times before, but I will do so because sometimes people only tune in to the occasional video, and I do upload a lot of them right now. I make videos by request. That isn't just a request in the comments. Because I am, I guess, working a full-time job and I have various commitments, I can't just make videos on every single thing that swings underneath my nose. But if someone picks up, let's say, a copy of The World Below, which has just been released on DriveThruRPG, I'll make sure it's linked in the video description. If they pick up a print copy of The World Below and they contact me through MatthewDawkins.com, well, do that, and I will more than happily make a video of your choosing. Well, within limits, obviously. Alternatively, if you're not in the RPG game, you're not interested in buying an RPG, well, that's fine. You can just go on over to patreon.com/MatthewDawkins. You can become a supporter there and request videos. That's fine too. And if Patreon isn't your bag, head on over to MatthewDawkins.com. There's a link for PayPal. Just wang me a little bit of money and request the video of your choosing. Now, why do I request this form of payment? Well, I much prefer that you just buy an RPG for yourself, specifically The World Below, or They Came from the RPG Anthology, and let me know about it, because I like people picking up new RPGs, and if the payment to me for that is getting a video made, well, I'm more than happy to do so. But if you want to just send me money, that's fine too. I'm not going to turn away money in this economy. Now, the latest request was on the Mithraic Mysteries, and the Mithraic Mysteries are one of my favourite cults in Vampire the Masquerade. They're a cult that didn't receive a huge amount of coverage in Vampire until Cults of the Blood Gods, and I guess the V20 Dark Ages Companion, and that's because I have always been interested in Mithras as a character in Vampire. I've always been interested in Mithraism, the religion, the Mithraeum in London as well. I have visited many times. And I love the idea of this migratory religion that some people like to draw comparisons between it and early Christianity. There's a lot that appeals to me, and so that's why I wanted to put it in Cults of the Blood Gods. It's why that I broke it down in V20 Dark Ages Companion. So that is its initial form, where you have the various tiers in the cult and what they mean, what the different roles mean. So it's always been interesting to me, and I was delighted to be able to work on it on V5. And I understand it has expanded beyond Cults of the Blood Gods since. I think there may even be a Mithraeum or Mithraist in one of the video games. But I was asked to discuss the Mithraic Mysteries as how they play in a game of Vampire. You know, what is their purpose in Vampire the Masquerade? And I think the easiest way to introduce it is, first of all, start talking about the big man himself, the big vampire, Mithras, the big cat in charge. Mithras, for what we know of his origins, probably started out somewhere in Persia, ended up a slave, enslaved to Rome, was at some point embraced, maybe before or after he was enslaved, and decided ancient Rome wasn't to his liking. Stuck around for long enough to migrate with one of the legions, landed in the British Isles, thought this is for me, and basically founded his cult, the vampire version of his cult there. He was already worshipped as a god before that, so it's likely he wasn't a slave in Persia or Rome, but there are certain rumours that say that he was. Maybe he was on top for a while and then he suffered a great fall. We believe that he probably got to his 4th generation through diablerie rather than through being a child of the Ventro Antediluvian, though there are conflicting sources there. And Mithras is more than any other Ventru Methuselah, someone who gives the impression of being pretty rigid, in control, having dominion over one solid domain, and playing the, I guess, archetypal role of vampire prince from the Dark Ages through to the modern era. Admittedly, you have to cut out a few periods of torpor and ultimately final death before resurrection in between. Mithras was replaced for a while by his seneschal Valerius and then his seneschal Lady Anne Bosley. He was nearly destroyed in the Blitz. He woke up, was mauled almost to death by a sept of werewolves. Surviving that, he was then diablerized by an Assamite anti-tribu, as they were then, Banu Hakim Monty Covens, and then went on to possess Monty Covens as his new vessel. That's the story of Mithras, but it doesn't really cover the religion. Mithras is, in mythology and religion, a deity that basically spanned much of the ancient Roman period, and you can still find Mithraic symbols throughout Rome today, and indeed the Mithraeum in London just goes to show how far it travelled. Mithras likely had origins in Persia, so ancient Iran. And we, as mentioned before, like to draw similarities between it and early Christianity. So it's an interesting religion. It's something that a lot of people find appealing. Its place in the world of darkness is somewhere between a cult of law and order and a cult of fertility. So when I developed them for V5, my main intention, and this may sound like a gross oversimplification, was to make them in parallel to the cult of Set. The cult of Set is very much a chaos cult. They want to destabilize order, they want to bring everything down to ashes, and so they want to put their own idol on top. Bring enlightenment to the masses by destroying their support structure. Mithras is more about rigidity, is more about order, law, respecting one's elders. It is, in a sense, the perfect cult for the archetypal Camarilla domain, where the prince rules everything with an iron fist, and where no dissent would be brooked. Now, how I established this was by basically making the cult of Mithras less corrupt, at least ostensibly so. They were a cult that was more given to tributes to their elders and rewards that would trickle down. That the closer you got to Mithras, of course, the deeper you got into the cult, the more diablerie would be permitted. And the closer you got to Mithras, the more in his shadow you could busk. Ultimately, Mithras designed his own destruction so that in the end someone else could take his place, which in the meta plot is Roger de Camden, Cappadocian, but in your games of vampire could be absolutely anyone. It could be something that your characters or one of your characters is aspiring to be, either the head of a Mithraic sect in your domain or the religion in general, because Mithras is absent. There aren't a whole bunch of vampires running around saying that Mithras is in the body of Monty Covens right now. As far as everyone's concerned, Mithras is destroyed. There's only a few who actually know that he is still around in any form. So it presents as a meta plot and a lore, a story hook opportunity, a cult without a head, or that's recently been shaken up by the death of its god, and that then allows players to reform it as they see fit, put their own characters in places of prominence, and deal with the religious infighting that comes with it. But to get back to that idea of it being a cult of law and order, I think it's very easy in a role-playing game to have all cults be absolutely destructive. The word cult is dirty, it's stinky. You think cult, you think these people need to be eliminated, you think Call of Cthulhu. When you have the cult of Mithras, and I present some of them in Let the Streets Run Red, I think, as well, in Milwaukee, maybe, The idea is that they are absolutely not that. They want all power structures, no matter how corrupt they might be, to stand the test of time. This is not a religion about heresy. This is not a religion that brooks people not being orthodox. This is a religion that expects you to toe the line, and when you do, you get your rewards. And that's why there is a set list of tiers of titles you can basically possess within the cult. You have the Raven, so the Corax title. I've got to remind myself of some of these. The Nymphus, the Bride. There is the Miles, which is the Soldier, which could be the melee. Leo, the Lion. Perses, the Persian. Heliodromus, the Courier, or indeed the Courier of the Sun. And finally, Pater, the father or mother of the cult, and that would be your religious head. And it is a very strict pyramid, so it should appeal to some Tremere if they weren't doggedly loyal to their own clan. Now, the reason I had to check all of that is because I wrote or developed a lot of this material quite a long time ago. But I drew those titles not from my imagination, but from history. This is how these cults were formed. They had a rigid hierarchy. Each tier of that hierarchy basically gave you certain permissions to perform in a certain way. And it basically allows you in Vampire the Masquerade to play a game within a game. I may play V20 more than V5 at this point, and Requiem more than that. But it ultimately grew a little boring for me as a Vampire the Masquerade player in V5 or any edition to make it always Camarilla, Sabbat, Anarch. Cults of the Blood Gods was a way of introducing greater depth of play in Vampire the Masquerade. It's why I was so heavily pushing the cults idea in V5 in the Camarilla book as well. The idea that this, on the face of it, ivory tower that will never fail is actually made up of loads of different pockets of faith who are always pecking at each other, was something that really appealed to me, because it meant you would see a different side of things, which wasn't just visiting Elysium and insulting the local Toreador and getting into a fight with a local Bruja. It was more about things like faith. And the wonderful thing about the Mithraic Mysteries, to my mind, is it provides a certainty. Now, faith arguably almost always comes with questioning. I mean, it wouldn't be faith if there were evidence, but the members of the Mithraic Mysteries can at least cleave to a certain certainty that they did have a god, they did have a founder, and while there are rumors of his destruction, as many religions have shown us, that founder will eventually experience a resurrection. They don't necessarily know that he has done so yet, but that only increases their fervor. And I think there is a fascistic element to it. It's not a nice element, clearly. Fascism never is. But that idea of we're right, you're wrong, and you're either going to bend before us or we're going to stamp on you. That kind of certainty that comes with the Mithraists in Vampire the Masquerade should be terrifying, but also alluring to people who crave order, especially if the years following their embrace have been nothing but chaos. I mentioned they're also a fertility cult because the actual real-world Mithras was associated with war and with fertility. And so war, yes, combat your enemies, but fertility is a very important thing for vampires too. The richness of the vitae, the ability to spread your undeath to another, to bring others into the fold of the cult of Mithras, is something celebrated at specific times in the year, during the solstice, the blood equinox, and that's what I meant, yes. There's the spring equinox and the summer solstice are very high seasons where the vampires in this order will not feed from tainted blood. They will only feed from the purest of vessels, and at the height of their ceremony, they will embrace someone who is chosen as a champion, who will be chosen to join the cult. And I love the idea that the person who's chosen thinks, this is my ticket. You know, this is, I'm going to be able to skip all those lowly ranks. But after the celebration's done, congratulations. Have your laurel wreath. Now you're at the bottom of the pile. Because everyone in the Mithraic Mysteries has got to work their way to the top. And yes, it is a dead man's shoes position. We don't have innumerable positions, but there's plenty for bottom scuts like you. You know, there's lots of Koraks, lots of ravens flying around, helping us out, Nymphs as well. You know, we need people to embrace more people. It's a part of doing business and belief in Mithras that you have to trust the orders above you. So the whole point of the Mithraic Mysteries is to provide that sense of order in Vampire, with, of course, the dramatically terrifying edge that they will combat you, they will destroy you if they feel like you are not towing the line, if you're not obeying the cult of Mithras. And the idea that this cult could start cropping up in certain domains around the world and start basically converting people to their will, all of a sudden it makes it look like an autocracy is spreading, and somewhere buried in all of that is the Pater, is the father or mother of the faith, who is controlling everything. To what end? Well, of course, to ensure the glorious resurrection of Mithras and ultimately his hegemony over the world. I think the last thing to mention is they are, in a sense, even though they're not exclusively a Ventrue cult, they are very Ventrue in theme, because they have that power dynamic, that look up to your elders, pay your dues, you'll get your rewards, but they will only be trickles. And eventually, if you break through, if you shop someone on the same level as you who hasn't been doing as good a job, hell, if you betray someone above you who has, let's say, let down the cult, well, then your rewards are going to magnify even further. You can start turning your Mithraic Mysteries into a secret police state, you know, a Stasi-like group, which I think also works. Having a Mithraist as your sheriff in a domain is bloody scary. The idea that this is someone who is not going to be reasoned with. They are always looking for potential informants, but more likely patsies who they can throw under the bus to just show that their iron rod way of working is always working. Now, that's the Mithraic Mysteries. If you want to hear more about the design ideas and where the different cults fit into Vampire the Masquerade, please, by all means, get in touch with me via MatthewDawkins.com, support me on patreon.com/MatthewDawkins, or pick up The World Below, or They Came From the RPG Anthology, and contact me through MatthewDawkins.com. Do so quickly, because prices are going up on drive-thru RPGs soon, and you don't want to get stung by the increased tariffs that are coming. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.